Jonathan's Tasty Techniques. If you couldn't already guess, I'm Jonathan, and on this show, I'm going to show you that with sound culinary technique, you don't need no stinking recipe. But if you do need a recipe, you'll have the tools in your belt to execute it properly. So by the end of this video, you're going to know how to roast a whole chicken, make a pan sauce, and make steamed rice. Now this all seems basic, I know, but you gotta start somewhere, right? Okay, now first things first. You want to make sure that you have everything ready to go right from the start. This is what the French call mise en place, and it makes the whole process a ton easier. Now I've got a 3.5 pound bird here, as well as some room temperature butter, kosher salt, and fresh ground black pepper. I've also got my oven preheated to 400 degrees. These are just standard seasonings, but you can flavor this butter any way you want. Try adding some fresh minced thyme, some fresh oregano, or fresh garlic. Or my personal favorite, put them all together, mix it in the butter, and I'm going to show you what we got to do. Dealing with chicken can be very dangerous stuff. I suggest we don protection. So obviously I've got my chicken, got my gloves. The chicken is breast side up, cavity towards me. Now what I'm going to do is lightly, very lightly, get underneath the skin of the chicken here with my finger, and we're going to separate it from the meat. What we're going to do here is make some room for the butter to kind of get in there, and it's going to season up the entire chicken and make sure that our breast meat does not dry out. So we're just going to get in there and make sure that this is all separated. Now that the skin is loosened from the chicken, I'm going to take my softened butter, and it has to be softened. If it's not, it's going to make this very difficult. This is just plain butter. Like I said before, you can season this however you want. But I'm going to take it and just kind of form it into a little paste here and put it directly underneath the skin. And while I'm doing that, I think this would be a good time for me to tell you that if you happen to have any leftover vegetables in your refrigerator, like maybe some onions or celery or carrots or some lemon even, this would be a really good time to maybe cut that up, and you can put it in the cavity of the chicken right before roasting, and when it does, it's going to add a lot of nice flavor and moisture to the chicken. So now I've got all that nicely rubbed in underneath the skin. I've got some leftover butter here that I can't use for other stuff because it's contaminated with chicken juice, so I'm just going to rub it on top. Why not, right? More butter, more better. Just going to make sure everything's pretty much covered. Going to make a nice browning and also a lot of really nice flavor. I've now removed one glove, and it's time to season the bird with plenty of kosher salt and black pepper. So you want to make sure you get good coverage all over. A little bit of black pepper. And you want to get everything, but you also want to make sure you season the underside as well, because we are going to use what we don't eat in another episode. Flip this guy over, fix the board, and the rest of my pepper. Doesn't have to be fancy. Just make sure that it's on there. I'm going to flip it back over and into the pan. And now I'm going to move it to the pan. I like to use this straight-sided saute pan here to do my roasting in. It catches all the drippings, and it's going to make our sauce making a little bit later a lot easier. Now, the only piece of specialized equipment that I'm using in this video that I recommend that you have is my probe thermometer. If you do not have this, you need to get one. It's the best $20 I ever spent. I'm going to insert this into the thickest part of the breast meat and set the thermometer for 155 degrees. This is going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt me. Now I'm not going to tell you how long that chicken's going to take. It's going to take as long as it's going to take to get to 155 degrees. But now that it's in the oven, let's get to work on that rice, shall we? Making this rice couldn't be easier. But it is one of the few times I'm going to give you an exact measurement for something. Now today I'm using white, long grain rice. And the only thing you need to remember about that is 2 to 1. 2 parts water to 1 part rice. Now I'm going to make a lot of rice because I love it. So I'm going to make 2 cups of rice, which means I need 4 cups or 1 quart of water. Now that my water's heating, I've gone ahead and measured out my rice. And now I'm going to show you a little trick that I do to make my rice nice and fluffy. All I do is I rinse it a few times in cold tap water to help remove some of the starch. You can see that cloudy water up on top of the rice. That's all that starch coming out. This is completely optional. I just like to do it. Now that my water has hit a full boil, I'm going to go ahead and stir in the rice. Carefully, it's hot, you know. Stir it in, clamp on the lid, and reduce the heat down to about low or medium low. You want the water to maintain a simmer, which is really just small bubbles breaking the surface. And we're going to set the timer for 18 minutes. It's probably going to take a little bit longer than that, but you don't want to overcook your rice. We're just going to check it at 18. I'll see you then. So after 18 minutes, my timer went off, but my rice wasn't quite done yet. It took another 2 minutes for it to fully cook. So it's a good thing I set my timer a little bit early, so that way I was at least in here to watch it. Come a little closer, I'm going to show you what it's supposed to look like when it's all done. Alright, so you want to carefully remove the lid because there's going to be a lot of steam. And then we're going to come in here with our spatula, and if you just pull the rice away, you can see that there is no moisture there on the bottom. The rice has absorbed it all, and this is now done. My chicken has gone beep beep beep, and it's been 45 minutes for those of you keeping track. So now let's take this thing out of the oven. Careful. Now we've got some stuff going together. I've moved the chicken to a plate so that any juices that kind of run off can get caught by the plate. We'll add that to the sauce a little bit later. Speaking of sauce, I've gone ahead and put the saute pan back on the burner. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of accumulated on the bottom of the pan, and we're going to liberate that here in a minute. Let's make a sauce. Okay, I've got my saute pan back on the heat. It's time to start building our sauce. So on top of the stuff that's in the bottom of the pan, there's a fair amount of fat. We're going to leave that. That's going to kind of be our base. So what we need is some chicken stock. Store-bought's okay. If you do use that, you want to go for the lower sodium stuff. It'll just taste better and it'll make it easier for you to adjust your seasonings a little bit later. Some flour, all-purpose is fine. We also need about a half a cup of wine. So what I'm going to do is get my pan back on the heat until it's nice and hot. Okay, my pan is nice and hot now. Everything inside is getting nice and jumpy from all the fat in there. That's fine. Now what we're going to do is add in about half of the white wine, and we're going to scrape around with a wooden spoon or wooden spatula, just something to kind of get the bits off the bottom. There's going to be a lot of hissing. That's okay. You may also want to increase your heat back to high, because what we're going to do is start reducing the wine down to almost nothing. I've got the wine reducing down to nothing. My bits on the bottom have been liberated from the bottom of the pan, and now you might be wondering, what about the rest of the wine? Well, you'll be thirsty. Alright, now once your mixture has thickened slightly, what you want to do is go ahead and dust in your flour. I've got about a tablespoon here, maybe a little bit more. It depends on the amount of fat that you have left in the pan. You kind of want it to come together in sort of a blob almost. And while I'm doing this, I've gone ahead and also reduced down my heat a little bit, just so the flour doesn't go crazy. Now the more flour that you add, the thicker your sauce can be. It's always easier to thin your sauce out a little bit later than to try to thicken it back up. It usually doesn't work out too well. Once your flour and your fat have come together in some sort of homogeneous mixture, it's time to add the stock. I've got about 2 cups. Let's go ahead and whisk that in to incorporate the butter and flour mixture. And I'm going to turn the heat back up to high and let this come to a boil, when it will thicken very nicely. My rice is done, my chicken's done, and hey, my sauce is done too. I tasted it just a minute ago. I added a lot of black pepper and a little bit of salt. It was a little bland, so I just needed something to kind of kick it up. If I had some lemon juice, that would have been really nice in there too. And you know what? My sauce is a little thin. I didn't add enough flour in the beginning. I know I told you should have made it thicker. I didn't, but you know what? Sauce happens. I think it's about time to eat. So I'm just going to spoon some sauce over my chicken here. You can feel free to strain the sauce if you want. There's still some chunkies in there. I'm not gonna, because I think it's beautiful. Now what kind of host would I be if I didn't go ahead and taste my own food, right? This was not only delicious, it's also super simple. And I really hope you give it a shot. Thanks for watching me today. Please check out my blog in case you miss anything, or if I add anything special a little bit later. And I'll definitely see you next time.